global tax strategies, Mike. So, there's been a lot of kind of adverse media attention paid to, companies making massive profits, but really, paying very little in corporation tax. Can you comment on that? And I assume that they're referring to large corporates who are paying little or no tax in certain jurisdictions, but, maybe talk a little bit about what companies should do there.
Yeah, and I would say generally, first of all, I think the way you structure your operations and how you deal with your intangible property and transfer pricing issues is going to drive largely your ability to do tax planning. But maybe I can quote our football coach, Bill Belichick. It was particularly with respect to Apple and Google and Microsoft and companies like this, and I think the quote is that they're good in all three phases of the game. They're good at the planning, they're good at the execution, and they're good on defense. And I think if you look at from a planning perspective, and this goes back to the 1930s and particularly U.S. case law that says taxpayers are not required to choose a structure where they pay the most tax. And I think more often than not, corporations, because of the issues that we've been talking about, because concerns around a variety of different regulations and limitations, they're probably paying more tax than they really need to. Now, in some cases, like Apple and Google, where they have potentially a lot of money at their disposal and a lot of resources to deal with it, they're planning on the front end. But they're using rules that are there to design to help investors, to help companies manage their international affairs. In my sense, is too often they're ignored until these issues arise. Now, on the execution side, I can give you a couple of very specific examples. Apple, for example, in the late 80s and early 90s, actually went to the IRS and negotiated an APA. An APA is an agreement with the government where you determine the tax consequences in advance of a transaction. That happened, 25, 30 years ago. And so they planned for these things, they negotiated effectively, and it dealt largely with their ability to manage their international tax affairs. Microsoft, 15 years ago, was one of the largest taxpayers in Japan. They went to the Japanese government and discussed